Hey everyone, I was just going to put out a little extra video today. I haven't done one in about a week. I took a week off. There'll be a few more days towards the end of this next week, I'm thinking, before I'll be coming back and doing videos. I'll see if I can do some daily when I start the next journal. We just finished the first journal with the blog entries, and we're getting ready to start the next journal, which begins with wearing orange, which is pretty cool. So I thought today what I would do would be an extra video about the travels between the two journals. And so this travel is about van lifing, and I went from North Carolina across the U.S. into Yellowstone, which was really amazing. And these are all the pictures of Yellowstone. So in Yellowstone, the first day I went in, and I went on the North Loop, and it's incredible the wildlife you see in Yellowstone and all the geysers, and Yellowstone has everything. It has rivers and waterfalls and canyons and mountains and all kinds of animals. It was incredible. And so that day I did the northern part, and then the next day or two I did the southern part, and it's like a big circle in the middle of Yellowstone, and it was incredible. When you go, if you ever get a chance to go, you should for sure. But in Yellowstone, it'll always be full of people because it's Yellowstone. And again, it's really just amazing. And it'll take time, and it'll go slow, and there'll be like two animals on the side of the road and a line of traffic for an hour, and you won't know why. And you'll get there and there'll just be two little animals on the side of the road. But again, just go in knowing that, take your time, enjoy it, and check it out, because it's phenomenal. It's just amazing. Wow. So these are all pictures of Yellowstone, and it was just great. So when I left Yellowstone, then from there, I went north towards Washington State. I was going to go see Glacier National Park, but I didn't really get a chance to. The top, you have to be careful with Glacier, because there's a small window of time in the summer where the road that runs along the very top of the mountains is still frozen. It'll either be thawing or it'll be refreezing. And so there's a small window of time between those two that is the opportune time to go see Glacier. I'm working on my next van now, and I'm hoping to make it to Glacier before it refreezes, if I can, this trip that I'm getting ready to take off on, but I'm not sure yet. So I wasn't able to make it that trip. And so I went into Seattle, and then I went on to Vancouver Island. And Vancouver Island is beautiful, and it's about 2 hours wide, and it's about 6 or 8 hours long. So in the very south tip, you have Victoria, which is a really beautiful town. But it is a beautiful town. But the thing about Victoria Island is the nature. The nature is just unbelievable. So the first thing I did, I went camping with a friend up in Campbell River, which is way north on the island. And we went down to this abandoned logging platform down by the water. And the channel between the island and the mainland is really narrow. So it's easy to see all the ships and whales and stuff like that when they come through, which is really cool. And then there was like an abandoned fishing village in the area, which is really cool to see down by the water. That was also just amazing. And the stars, being that far away in nature, like you would look up at night and you could just see a zillion stars. It was just amazing and incredible. And then the next thing I went to go see on the island was Tofino. Well, my friends are in Nanaimo. And so I traveled west across the island, and it's about 2 hours wide. And you pass this huge, beautiful lake, Lake Kennedy. And then you come off the other side, and then you come down to the ocean on the west coast. And it's a bit of a peninsula. And at the top is Tofino, which is kind of a small town, but it's really cool. It's really worth seeing. And then at the bottom is Yucatán. And it's also really pretty. That area is just beautiful. It's really pristine beaches, and there's not a lot of sustained population there. Most people travel in and travel out in touring around and seeing it and checking it out and that sort of thing. And it's Yeah, it's really beautiful. And so these are the pictures from that portion of travel. And again, I was just traveling in my little Toyota Sienna. And at that point, when I made it back to my friend's place in Nanaimo, I had been thinking about it for a long time, and I went with a Toyota Sienna, an older one, that was all-wheel drive, because I wanted to go see Alaska. And while I was there, I decided that I would just go see Alaska. And so Alaska from there was 40 hours drive time from Vancouver north across the Yukon and then into Alaska. And I did the Cassider side, which there's two different ways you can go. And I ended up going up and going around the Cassider. So as you're going north in Canada, you get to a certain point where there just isn't as much support and things on the road as far as like police and tow trucks and things like that. And I saw some cars that had been wrecked off in the ditch on the Cassider. And then when I came back 2 or 3 weeks later, they were still there. So when you go, you want to prepare and you want to get used to buying fuel every 3/4 of a tank and just fill up wherever you are. But so going up the Cassider, it was incredible. There were all these beautiful lakes and mountains and wildlife. I ended up seeing like 4 or 5 bears, no grizzlies. I'm totally okay with that. They were all black bears. And then I saw like a bobcat, a mountain lion, some moose, porcupines, and I think even some foxes going up through there. And so I went up the Cassider and I got to the Alcan, and then I turned left on the Alcan and went into Alaska. So on the Alcan, there were still sections of gravel because the road was still broken up pretty heavy because it gets beat up in the winter and they can only fix so much of it in the summer. So then they'll gravel over the section, and that'll be it for the season until they get a chance to do more road work. And so I went across the Yukon, which was really incredible as well. The nature was just pristine, and there was nobody for hours of driving. It was incredible, just incredible. And so crossing across the Yukon, and then I went into Alaska. And Alaska, the road's kind of beat up there too. It just seems like part of it. And there's campgrounds and things like that along the way that you'll come to at different times on the trip. And when I came into Alaska, I went up to Fairbanks. And I hung out in Fairbanks for a day or 2 or 3. And again, the nature is just amazing. I think I saw more moose. I saw some elk. And you'll see like the riverbeds will be really wide. And the river will be really narrow at this time because I went late summer. But during the melting season and things like that, it would be a full-on river of water. So the nature, everybody has to be more aware of the nature there because it could just really wipe you out at any time, and it's wild. Yeah. So I went up into Fairbanks, and I hung out there a day or 2 or 3, and then I came south out of there and stopped off at Denali. And Denali is beautiful, and the park is amazing. And something to keep in mind, if you ever get the chance on driving to Alaska, is there's tons of RVs, and there's tons of people on their bucket list to see Alaska. So it's sort of like the Yellowstone, right? So imagine, just know it's going to take time. It's going to be a slow process, and it's a long drive to get to Alaska. So it's important to be in the mindset that you're not in a rush and you're cruising along. For that reason, a lot of people will fly into Alaska and they'll rent an RV or something like that and then travel around Alaska and then fly back home. Some people will buy a rig in the States, travel to Alaska, travel around, and then sell it and then fly back home. So generally, by the time people finish a drive up and touring around Alaska, they really don't want to do the drive back. So that's something to keep in mind. For some reason, it didn't really bother me that much, just because I was listening to my kirtan music and meditating and hanging out with Radha and Krishna. And it was like me and Radha and Krishna in my little van zooming around Alaska and across the Yukon. And it was awesome. Anyhow, so Denali. So Denali's beautiful. The national park is amazing. These are all pictures from there. And then after Denali, I came down to Anchorage. And then I spent maybe like a week or so in Anchorage. And at the time, I was working a little bit, doing some Amazon stuff, delivery stuff there in Anchorage, which was pretty interesting, just really different. And then after Anchorage, I left from there, came back up the lower road on the other side of the mountain on the other side of the mountain there from Janu, the glacier. Yeah. And came up back into Canada. And right before I got back into Canada, I was driving a little 20-year-old Sienna, and I met another one, 20 years old Sienna, same color as mine. And theirs had stuff loaded on top of it and stuff hanging off the back of it and one little cargo carriers and everything. And they were coming out of the Yukon on their way into Alaska as I was coming back out. It was really pretty wild. And so I came back out, back down the Alcan, back across the Yukon. And for some reason, I wanted to go back down the Cassider again. The Cassider is more remote, and it just gives more of the feel of remoteness and nature and amazingness. It was incredible. Yeah, so I came back down the Cassider again, which was really nice. Those cars that had wrecked previously were all still there. And I saw more wildlife, more animals. I saw tons of signs for grizzlies, and especially in an area coming down through there, the Cassider. And there was a little fellow that worked at the gas station in the middle of the Cassider, and he was just like, yeah, you can open a door and there'll be a huge grizzly there at any time. He was like, yeah, they're super stressful to live around. I was like, wow, that sounds so intense. So that was really wild to see that. And then came back down the Cassider the rest of the way, back into Vancouver, and then back across to Vancouver Island into Nanaimo, and then hung out with my friends. And then at that point, I did the initiation with my teacher into the orange and doing the sannyas thing. And then at that point, I put on orange, and that's where this next journal begins, and this one ends. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the pictures. I'm going to try and get them in the best order that I can to illustrate these places. If you ever get a chance to check out these spots, please do, because it's amazing. It's really worth it. And have a great rest of your day. And thank you for tuning in, and watch for the next series of videos that'll be coming soon. And yeah, thank you for your support and your time. Radhe Radhe.